I'm curious, how would you define spiritual health?
Christian tradition, it's a love of God. The pinnacle of the spiritual life is living in communion with God, sharing in his divine life. So maybe another way of saying it, of figuring it out, is kind of imagine asking people, like, who's the holiest person you've ever met in your life? The most godly person that you know. Tell me about them. What are they like? Pretty similar. You're going to start seeing some themes. And I think one of the themes is joy. Is there any other type of Christians besides a joyful one? You ever met really angry, resentful Christians? I'm sure, yeah, there are, because we're all fallen. But that deep spiritual life is joy. They're happy. And not like a surfacey, happy, clappy, kind of like, oh, that's so much fun, but it's a deeper, abiding joy. There's a peace in them. There's an immovability. I mean, I can think of 5 people right now that I just look up to. Like, they're not perfect. They know that. They'd be the first to say, but there's this holiness, deep, abiding joy in them.
Welcome back to the Build Beyond podcast. I don't usually record intros for my podcast episodes. Sometimes I feel like I need to, and this is one of those episodes. This is, I think, kind of an intense, uncomfortable subject for a lot of people, and it's something that I've been wanting to cover for quite some time. We are going to talk about what it means to be spiritually healthy. How do we even define spiritual health? And then what I really wanted to dive into, and what I'm really happy we got into, are these deeper questions of, can someone actually be truly healthy if they have their physical health but they lack spiritual health? And can someone be truly healthy if they are spiritually healthy but they don't take care of their physical health? And how does the pursuit of spiritual health augment the pursuit of physical health? And you can switch that around. This episode is perfect for you if you are spiritually healthy. You have a good relationship with God, but you've got health problems. Maybe you know what to do, but you can't make those changes, or you haven't been successful in making those changes. This episode is also perfect for you if you have your physical health. Let's say but you don't have spiritual health. So let's say you're someone who takes care of their body. You try and meet physical activity guidelines. You work out, you walk, you're an active person. You're constantly working on your diet. You think about these things. And there are reasons why you maintain that physical health, but you don't have that connection with God. There's something in this episode for you. And then there's something in this episode for the people who fall between that. There's a lot of people out there who have no relationship with God. They have no spiritual health. And they also lack physical health. And they might want one and not the other. They might want both. They might not even be thinking about either of them. But if you're listening right now and you fall into that category, there is a lot in this episode for you. We are going to talk about this from a Christian perspective, because my guest today, he and I are Christians, and more specifically, we're both Catholics. But that doesn't mean that if you are another denomination of Christian, that you're not going to get any benefit out of it. And I believe that even if you are part of another religion, I think there are some things that are unique to Christianity that make it special, but the universal themes that we're talking about should be relevant for almost every religion. So I guess with that being said, this is a good fit for anybody. We're not trying to tell anybody how to think or what to believe. It's more of me on a faith journey, asking a bunch of questions and then just kind of word vomiting my confused thoughts and bouncing it off someone else and having them give me feedback and try and make sense of what's going through my head, because these are the questions that I have. My guest today is Aaron Petersen. Aaron is a father. He's a husband. He is a former collegiate athlete, actually a former multi-sport collegiate athlete. He's a deacon of the Catholic Church, a dean of men, a lifter of weights. This is starting to sound like a Game of Thrones introduction. Aaron's an all-around good dude, and I value him as a friend. And he actually helped officiate my wedding. So he's a family friend, and I think he has a wealth of knowledge on this subject, and you're going to learn about his faith journey and how he became a deacon and what led him to the church. Or I guess he grew up in the church, but what led him to be an active member of the church. So people who got health issues, people who have questions about God, questions about religion, and people who are just struggling with their faith, or people who are struggling with fitness or health, or people who are struggling with all of this stuff. This episode, I think, is going to be very relevant to you. So without further ado, we're going to get into it. I hope you enjoy. Thanks for listening.
Well, these podcasts are about your health, so I think it's worth doing.
It's fun. I think I get a lot out of it, and I think it's hard because the purpose of the podcast and of Build Beyond as a company, which is my clinical practice name, is that I want to challenge and guide people because I want people to reach their full potential. And I came up with that through, I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek.
Okay.
And so I've read, Marissa introduced me to him and his books. I just couldn't get enough. And I read almost every book he has. He's got online stuff. So I took some online classes. And one of the ones the book that I read, and he has an online class, is Find Your Why, or it's about why. It's something about finding why. So not talking about what you do, but more of talking about why you do it. And there's a project that you can do, because you can't just write down your why. You have to go through it, and you have to have a partner. And basically you have to come up with a bunch of people. There's a bunch of prompts for me, and I have to go and write all this stuff down. And then there's a bunch of prompts for the person interviewing me. And it's designed to kind of bring up, not conflict, but to go deep. And it was like a 2 to 3 hour project. And then based on that, the person who interviews me says, based on everything you've told me, they kind of go through a worksheet. This is your why. So it's an interesting thing that you don't get to determine your why. You get to talk about things, and then the person listening and helping you says, well, this is what I think your why is. And you can kind of manipulate it. But what we came up with is that I like to challenge people, and I like to guide people. And ultimately I want them to reach their full potential. And I think that's what people want, which I think segues pretty nicely into the topic for today. Well, it segues nicely into every topic because this is all I talk about. But as a healthcare provider, for healthcare providers, we don't get spiritual training. So I spend all day, every day talking to people about how to reach their full potential. We talk about physical fitness. We talk about sleep. We talk about just general physical activity. We talk about pain, help connect people with other healthcare providers. So we might talk about stress, or there's so many different things. Nutrition's a big thing. The one thing we never talk about, and I never talk about with patients, is spiritual health and their connection with God. And I think that's a tough one because, there's so many different religions, and there's so many different thought processes depending on how people were raised. And I think that's why we have priests, we have clergy. There's people who do this. So it's not like as if healthcare providers should become spiritual leaders, but it's not even usually something we even consider, most of us. Some do. It's nothing we're trained to do. So I wonder, and I have been wondering, how is this connection with physical health and spiritual health? Are they, because a lot of times we look at science and God as being, or people look at it as being opposing. And I think health and wellness falls into that science realm so often. And there's so many people who are big thinkers in health and wellness and in science who don't have that connection. But historically, it hasn't always been that way. It's actually quite the opposite. Some of the most profound thinkers and innovators that we've had have been deeply religious. So it started me on this path of just thinking about and questioning, am I serving my patients as well as I could without addressing this topic? And it's not something I'm probably ever going to do in a one-on-one situation because I'm not qualified to do it. But the podcast is an interesting opportunity because the podcast has the same why. So I can bring in people. For example, I've brought in physicians. I've had Cam Mueller on. I've had Nikki Ellis. I don't have their specialties. I've had Denise Levenger, who's a registered dietitian, nutritionist. So I can bring on people who have specialty and have knowledge and actually work with people in these different areas. And so religion and Christianity and your relationship with God, I think that's been on my list for a while. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So for the listeners who don't know who you are, you're not a priest.
No.
Talk to me about your role in the Catholic Church.
Yeah. So I'm a deacon. So there's clergy and laity in simple terms, right? Clergy ordained and laity not. There's three levels or three types of ordination: diaconal, priestly, or presbyterate, and then there's the bishop ordination, right? Episcopal ordination. All bishops have been ordained 3 times. They were ordained deacon, then ordained priest, and then a bishop, right? The bishop oversees the spiritual well-being of all the people in his territory. And it's literally geographic, like kingdoms in the old days, right? Then he divides up his kingdom, if you will, his diocese into smaller components, typically called parishes. And he'll assign to each parish a priest at a church. So in Hillsdale, it's St. Anthony's of Padua. And the pastor there is the pastor of everyone in Hillsdale County, that sort of thing. And then deacons, what we do is our ordination is proclaim the gospel and in service. So our stole kind of goes across, and it's a kind of a nod to Christ the servant when he washed the disciples' feet, through the towel over the shoulder, if you will, and just kind of reminder of service. So that's why. So we can marry, bury, and baptize. That's, if you've heard that before. Ministers, deacons can too. That's why I was able to, officiate or be a part of officially of your wedding, and which was a great blessing, by the way. And but a lot of what I do is proclaiming the gospels at Mass, of course, but sharing the gospel or spreading the gospel is in a day-to-day life too, right? So we're all called to give an obligation of prayer each day, universal prayer. We participate morning and evening prayer, the official prayer of church, but we also try to live our life, praying unceasingly, trying to keep God close to us all day long, or staying in his presence, or reminding ourselves to be in his presence. Whether we're lifting, having conversations with colleagues, or, doing our work, whatever it is, driving home, all those sorts of things. So does that help you think the listeners? Did I leave anything out?
No, I think that's good. Because I want to establish your, I don't know if authority is a good word, but your experience in this, and why your opinion on this matters. You're also physically active. You're a collegiate athlete. You got like 18 kids, and they're all athletes at competitive levels. collegiate athletes in multiple sports, and I think when when you live a life devoted to God, but you also you live in a physical body, and that physical body is a gift. And so I think I see a lot of people who maybe have a great relationship with God that don't take care of their physical body. And then we have people who take care of their physical body, but they don't have a great relationship with God. And so I think regardless of where a listener is right now, they're on one side of that fence or they're sitting in the middle. So they can think about, for the people who feel like they have a great relationship with God, but they maybe aren't taking care of their physical body as well as they should. You know, I wonder, could that practice, whether it's walking or exercise or nutrition or whatever it is, could it actually bring them closer to God? And for the people who don't have a relationship with God but are very physically healthy, are they reaching their full potential without that? Because I feel like a lot of people who are healthy, who eat healthy, who exercise, who meet the physical activity guidelines, who really put a lot of work into that, they do it not because it's fun, because there's not a whole lot of, I mean, it is fun, but it's not that much fun. I think from the outside looking in, you think that people love it, but you know, eating apples and oatmeal and doing push-ups, it gets old. But people do it over and over and over again for years because they value it and they value the way it makes them feel. And a lot of, I think, when people are really devoted to physical activity, it's because it helps them manage things in their life. It helps them manage stress. It helps them manage their schedule. It helps them manage anxiety. It helps them manage relationships because they might be happier around people, or they might enjoy working out with people. There's so much that they get from physical activity and from taking care of their body. And anyone who's listening who has that relationship with God is already saying, well, you can get all of that by developing a relationship with God. All of that comes. So if you're exercising because you get so much out of it and you're trying to express that full potential and you don't have the relationship with God, I wonder more and more, are you missing something? Can you actually reach that full potential? So that's kind of where I want to go with, or start with the conversation today, is how do we start to make sense of this? And I'm not here to push anyone into religion or say that you should become a Catholic or anything like that. But if you're still listening to this discussion, then either you agree or you have questions. And so I want to provide some context and some information for people. So from a Catholic perspective, how does the Catholic Church look at that as far as our responsibility to maintain a healthy body, or to do our best to maintain a healthy body? But, you know, because obviously for some people they have different challenges.
Sure. Well, Chris, I would say that first of all, I have a very ecumenical heart. Some of my dearest friends I lift with are non-Catholic Protestant ministers. Most of the, so I when I answer these things, comes from a place of love and affection for all walks of life. Yes, I'm Christian, I'm Catholic. I'm going to be more familiar with that. But it's funny, the guys I lift weights with, we talk about how much weight and what techniques. And next thing you know, we're talking about spiritual stuff. Our Lord says this, our Lord says that. So to kind of get started, I would say that kind of old school catechism, right? To know, love, and serve God, right? Or go, our purpose in life is to know, love, and serve God. Serving God are the two commandments, love God basically with your heart, mind, soul, everything you got, and your neighbor is yourself. I would say that is a driving force in Christianity. And then from, being able to work at this beautiful college and I'm not a philosopher or a theologian. It can be dangerous with it. There's in these type of talks, there's conversations. There's so much room for precision when you start going through things. But we're all, if we're human, right? We're called to be. There's something in us to be virtuous, right? And we talk with our students here all the time that as we grow in virtue, we're approaching the angels or the godly we're moving that way. As we grow in viciousness, we become more like beasts, right? And the 4 human virtues or the 4 cardinal virtues, right, is prudence, the intellectual virtue, which is practical wisdom. And bear with me here. This may be you may have to edit some of this, but the prudence is a practical wisdom, meaning as we grow in wisdom, which is the knowing of truth and unchanging things. Practical wisdom is knowing the right thing to do in any situation, right? It's kind of like taking the truth that's there and then how do I navigate this situation? I mean, you use prudence all the time. Like, okay, I'm looking at this person's experience in exercise, their body shape and age and all those things. And you're making prudential decisions all the time. Like, this is probably the right thing to do, right? So a human virtue is prudence. And then the next one is justice, knowing what is right to do, or having a disposition. Prudence kind of helps you see what the right thing is to do in any situation. And justice is the disposition to give someone their due, right? To say thank you or to treat people well. We all have this sense of justice in us. You don't take from other people. That doesn't seem right. In fact, when we're angry, usually it's a sense of, we're feeling a sense of injustice committed towards us. And we feel guilty. It's what we feel when we've committed an injustice, right? So guilt and anger are evidence of this virtue of justice or its lack of, or that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Now, the other 2 virtues that remain out of the 4 human virtues, the cardinal virtues we call them because all other virtues kind of stem from these. They're a type of one of these 4, a combination of the 4. Is temperance and fortitude. Temperance is the right disposition in the face of pleasure or comfort. So if you know the right thing is to do, because you're cutting weight or you're trying to, like, I always joke with my kids. They go, "Dad, are you going to lose weight?" I said, "I'm in a bulking season for 25 years now. I'm bulking," right? Yeah. But when it comes time to cut weight, my kids, I always laugh, Oreo double stuffs. Right? Like, that puts a lot of pressure on my temperance, right? I know the right thing is to do. I got this plan of working out or this other plan. And anyway, so doing what you know is the right thing to do in the face of pleasure, and fortitude or courage is having the right disposition to do what you know is right, even though it's going to hurt. And so where I'm heading with this is setting up the fact that, all humans, regardless of faith, have the potential for those cardinal virtues. And the more we cultivate them, the happier we are, Chris, in life. So just whether or not they worked out at all, learning to do what the right thing is to do, treat people the way they should be treated, and doing what's right and treating them the right way, even though it could be hard or painful or be easier that is growing humanity. And I know of no other, the physical fitness part develops those virtues profoundly. Like, I think, so the classical understanding, right? Like, I was told, I remember one of my professor friends said in the ancient times and Greek times, before they put kids in school and did all the intellectual stuff, they taught them gymnastics and music. And by music, it means poetry, playing the whatever instruments they had way back then, right? And gymnastics wasn't about, what we see on TV, doing backflips and all that stuff, but it was about running, fighting, and throwing, cultivating the courage, the temperance, fair play. They cultivated the moral virtues before the intellectual, right? And they went hand in hand. And so in the kind of classical understanding of happiness, it is doing whatever you're going to do in this world in accordance with virtue and having some friends with you in that.
Okay.
And that's just classic. I even got where I was headed. Chris was going to say the theological virtues of faith, hope, and love would be like supercharging those virtues and the love of God. And that was a long answer. And again, to kind of get to cue up kind of how I frame where the intersection is.
Well, it sounds like, so if you've got someone who is, let's say, Christian.
Okay.
Let's say Catholic. We'll get really specific. And this person is having trouble making changes in their life physically, physical fitness, health, and they're struggling. They know what they need to do, but they try and they can't. For them, in that instance, maybe looking at these virtues, stepping back from the changes that you need to make in your diet and the physical fitness and everything else, just kind of put that to the side. And then turn to God and think about these virtues and reflect on them, and using that as your foundation, then to go back. Is that something that, like, because it seems like if you can have that relationship spiritually and you can cultivate those things spiritually and you can do the hard stuff there, then everything becomes possible then. Is that something like that someone who's, because I think about it from like a Marine Corps perspective, because in the Marines, we all go through we have the same beliefs.
Yep.
I mean, not religious, but you know what I mean? Like we all get, basically we go through like, it's basically like joining a cult essentially. So it's just like it doesn't matter. You all have we have the same ethos. We say the same things. We know what those things mean. You can snap someone back into it. Someone's not doing the right thing or they're losing their way and they want to be better. They want to be a better Marine. We can tap back into that cult mentality in a way. And I'm not trying to make
that core training. Yeah.
So it's, and so I'm thinking just from like a perspective of like a fellow Catholic or a fellow Christian who's struggling with health and physical fitness and struggling with their physical body, because we would have that core belief together, that connection. That could be something that I probably wouldn't do, but I could, you should go talk to someone and get right with God. Like really start to think about these core values that we both share, because once you have a foundation in that, we should be able to walk more. We should be able to make changes in our lives. Is that accurate?
I think you're heading in the right direction. I think, so because you and I are humans together, we know we can cultivate virtue, and we know if maybe the shared faith or shared experience can draw us closer together. What I think is the most profound between the spiritual life, or that is so obvious is the mindset. I mentioned offset before how I got wrestlers in college, right? I have 3 guys that have wrestled, play sports, and this mindset training, and it's just how important it was. Well, as I look at it as a deacon, in a non-spiritual sense, it's like, hey, this negative talk, this is, you're beating yourself up. You've already lost before you step on the mat because of your fears. You're giving into whatever your thinking is, right? Well, that comes from a long line of 2,000 years of kind of spiritual life and disciplines, the church fathers, the desert fathers, especially the desert father, living alone, battling demons and the enemy in the prayer life. I a lot of times talk about the enemy attacks us by lying to us and discouraging us and beating us up. And that prayer life, you're no good and you're not worthy to sit, with the Father. So watching these parallels between the spiritual growth and the physical growth, they go hand in hand. And when I mention those 4 virtues, what you learn is you can't be all prudence, like on a scale from 1 to 10. I'm 10 in prudence. I'm just 2s in these others. It doesn't work that way. Mm-hmm. They toggle, they're linked together. You can start growing in one, but if the others aren't developed, it's going to kind of be limited. Or the other way to look at it is, as one gets going, it's going to start helping you grow in the other areas, right? That there's this connection. And I think when you look at the human person, there's the spiritual life, the social life, the physical life, the intellectual life. There's kind of all these facets. And as you grow in one, it's going to help you grow in the other. I mean, my one son, going through the mindset of battling how to train and setting up goals and thinking about himself and all those fears about failure or whatever it was, the process it took him through actually grew him. He matured in all those areas, intellectually, physically, of course, but mindset, the mental, intellectual, and the spiritual. It like blew open the door to growth in all those areas. But it started with training and trying to get better at competing and training and in the physical world. And once that got better, all of it kind of went together. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. And I'm thinking about this my brain is switching from different perspectives. And I wonder, so if you have a group of people, a group of Catholics,
okay,
and they have a great relationship with God, and they're
10 of them, are we going to say 10?
Yeah, let's say 10.
Okay.
But let's say all 10 of these people, they're not even close to meeting physical activity guidelines. They're carrying too much body weight. They've got health issues.
Okay.
And like most people, they're aware of it. They're aware of how to change it. They've been told by physicians that they should probably do something, but they don't.
Okay.
I think this describes probably a large portion of people, not just within the Catholic Church, but it's just in America. America, we tend to have a problem. And so I wonder, shouldn't it like theoretically be easier for someone who has a really good relationship with God to look in the mirror and say, well, I'm not maximizing this gift. I'm not taking it seriously. Because I'll tell you, the funny story is that, spoiler alert, Santa doesn't exist. My son doesn't know that yet. He's 6. So a couple of years ago, he was really into pirates. It was like 3 Christmases ago.
Okay.
So we got him a bunch of pirate stuff, and I thought it'd be fun to make a scavenger hunt with like notes that I burned, and like Santa basically set up a scavenger hunt, and he found all his pirate stuff.
Gar.
Yeah, he loved it. Well, I created something I had to replicate, because he was like, well, if Santa comes back next year, am I going to have a scavenger hunt? So last year I did the same thing. I did a scavenger hunt. Well, this year he still believes in Santa. So I had to do it again. The big gift at the end of the scavenger hunt was a GoPro, because Connor's really into fishing and he loves YouTube fishing channels, and that all the guys use GoPros.
All right.
So they have like chest rigs, so you can see and you can get all the audio and everything. It's really cool. So I got him a cool waterproof GoPro with a chest rig. So he gets to the end of he gets to the end of the scavenger hunt, opens this up, and he goes, "What's that?" Because he can't really tell by the box. And I said, "Oh, it's a GoPro. Santa got you a GoPro." And he kind of looked at it and he was like, "Is this the last gift, do you think, from Santa?" And I said, "Yeah, I think so." And he goes, "Well, that's disappointing." And then later in the day, I was sitting there with Marissa, and he was like, "Mom, you get us a bunch of gifts and Santa gets us gifts, but why doesn't Dad get us any gifts?" And I'm just sitting there looking at her, and she's like, I can't, let my ego get in the way and be like, well, Santa doesn't exist and I got you all the cool stuff that you usually like that Santa gets you. That's what I'm doing.
I can't wait until he watches this in 5 years.
I know.
It's going to be awesome.
But so I gave him a gift that I know what he wants in his heart.
Mm-hmm.
I watch him do things. He loves fishing. He's addicted to it. He loves YouTube, and he loves these. There are YouTube channels with guys in their 20s, and they make a career out of fishing and just goofing around with their friends and putting stuff on YouTube. And they're hilarious. And he loves it. And So I know what he loves. I know what's in his heart. I know what he wants. I know that I could give him this gift. And if he uses it, he's going to get so much out of it. He's going to have so much fun playing with it, watching those videos, learning how to edit them. And then in 10 years, man, he's going to love looking back at his wedding someday at the rehearsal dinner. I can bust out some of these videos of when he was 6, catching big bass. It's going to be awesome.
Pirate Santa.
But I gave him this gift and he didn't appreciate it.
Yeah.
Because of that, he right now is not maximizing it because he hasn't taken out of the box yet. I have patience with him because he's 6 and I'm his dad, and I know eventually. So the metaphor here that is, for my understanding of God comes from just my understanding as a dad. I think that's where
that's a pretty good start.
So I watch you. Okay. Remember the toddler stage when they become aggressively independent and everything takes way longer to get done because they need to do it themselves. And it's always done wrong. And so you just have to stand there while they put the shoes on the wrong feet and their pants are on backwards and their shirt's on inside out. And you're standing there saying, I can help you. I'm like, no, I don't want your help. Shoes are on the wrong feet. They're not on the wrong feet. They're on the right feet. And, and it's like, I'm here. I'm trying to help. Later on, when it takes forever for them to get dressed and get going, they stand there with the pride of like, look what I did. I did this. And, as a parent, you're just standing there looking over them like, you did 5% of it and you did it wrong. And I had to redo it. But you pat them on the back and you say, that's cute.
Right.
You did that. And I feel like for me, that's the relationship I have with God, where I'm the toddler and he's just looking at me saying, that's cute. No. That's a cute thing that you just did. You're participating and I'm infinitely patient.
Yeah.
I could have done it better but good. And so, I think that's where like the pride thing, it has to go out the window because you're like, okay, I probably didn't do as much of that as I thought I did. And even if I did it all myself, I didn't give myself these gifts. You know what I mean? Like I didn't give myself my DNA or my parents or, you know what I mean? All of that was set up for me. So when I think about people who have a really good relationship with God and he gave them this gift and they're not healthy and they could be healthier, there are things that they could do and they can't make those changes. It's hard as a healthcare provider because I'm sitting there thinking, this is so simple. I know it's not easy, but it's incredibly simple. And the hard part is just the consistency and the motivation to stay on the path. And I feel like that's something that God can deliver. And so I wonder what the breakdown is. And I'm just looking from like a Christian perspective for those Christians out there, specifically maybe let's talk about those Catholics who need to make a change and they know what they need to do and they just can't get it done. Could they go back to these virtues that you're talking about and spend some time and then be able to refocus and look at, because if you're talking about salvation and walking that path, and walking in the light and not giving into all of these temptations and doing the hard things when you want to do the easy things, shouldn't that, if you're walking that spiritual path, shouldn't it be easier in a way to walk the physical path? And wouldn't the two of them augment each other? Wouldn't doing more push-ups and eating more fruit and vegetables and making these changes, wouldn't that actually bring you closer to God? Because you're actually opening the GoPro that I got you. And you know what I mean? Like, yes, you're taking your physical body out of the package and you're using it. You're not doing it well, but you're doing it. You know what I mean? I feel like God's not going to sit there and judge you for your squat technique. He's just going to be like, yeah, he's doing it. Like a dad watching a toddler, like, oh, it's about time.
Well, yeah. I think your imagery of of the Father is just beautiful. That's great. I had one similar where I was sitting on, you know, you've probably seen this. I've, 8 kids over the years that come up, the refrigerator art. It's awful. By any standard, it's awful. It's horrible.
Oh my gosh.
But man, when your kid comes to you and brings you this thing that he did himself, all its imperfections, it warms the Father's heart, right? And we're like, Dad, isn't this great? Yeah, thank you. I love you, right? And that, so
Cora brought home something that was just crumpled up paper with red paint on it. Connor was like, it looks like she killed a squirrel.
Yeah. the first judge. No, that's so I had a priest in my life who said he was dying, and I was bringing him home on a trip, and he gave me his final homily, and he said, Father Tom, and he said, Aaron, I think I've figured it out. It's not easy, but it's simple. Whatever it is you're dealing with, invite God into it, invite Jesus into it, and do the best you can. And I think, you take those 10 people we talked about, they're Catholics or whatever, and I know how you're setting that up, the particulars for each soul matters. Like there's a general conversation I have with them, but there'd be a one-on-one where I'd understand, like getting back to your why are you not taking better care of yourself, or why is it not that important? Or why does it fall short? Or why do you care to get better? And I think, the faith life, growing closer to God, to know first that he loves us unconditionally, right? And he wants us to live in that love, that our day to day is affected by his love in our lives, that his loving will moves through us into everything we do. It is our driving motivation, right? And so that affects all our I call them vocations, all our roles, all our different roles. He should be in there. There shouldn't be any roles where like, Lord, I got this, right? And pride, a simple word, is ungodly self-reliance. And, you go back to the garden about self-reliance and ungodly self-reliance, but we're called to be humble, right? And so spending time in prayer, reading, diving into the word, communal prayer, going to mass if you're Catholics, the sacramental life, all these things are about receiving first and letting it kind of supercharge where we're headed and inform where we're headed and grow us in the virtues. It's like if we got a little fire of virtue, the human virtues, and all of a sudden you got, the gifts of the supernatural gifts of faith, hope, and charity or love, infusing on them, right? Pouring gasoline on them and growing and expanding in our lives, right? That your comparison, certainly feels intellectual, but I would say that the Holy Spirit gave you that insight to see that your role as a father here on earth is like the Heavenly Father. And so we're called, quite honestly, for 10 of those, you got those 10 people, one of them may be called not to be fit. I know that sounds weird, right? Is that physical fitness for the sake of physical fitness or for vainglory, I would say, in the spiritual life, so I look good. Our faith would say, do we sure we have that right? However, treating the body like a temple of the Holy Spirit this gets to justice and loving God, receiving his love, loving God, loving ourselves, our neighbor as ourselves. It implies that we do love ourselves. There becomes a point where it's unjust on how we're treating ourselves. We feel guilty and angry about how we are working out or not working out, or our physical fitness, because we have this sense that we are committing an injustice towards ourselves. We're angry because we feel this injustice, but then we feel guilty because we committed it, and hitting our knees and say, Lord, something's not right with how I'm taking care of myself. And I know this is important. Will you help me? And in general terms, there's kind of a pendulum swing of dangers. I do this pendulum swing with my college guys all the time, college students. And it really is kind of the spiritual life or any problem in our life or challenge. And the swings, the extreme swings of the pendulum are the places where if you stay there, it's a problem. But on the one hand, it's like, and I'm getting fat. I've been bulking too long, or I'm not a shape. I can't jump. I can't move from here to there. Something in my back or whatever, when they come to you with those things. Actually, that's a good sign. I'll get that. But they kind of see it and say, I need help. Or they, first of all, they kind of see it like this is a problem. Oh, well, forget it. And they ignore the problem and they just keep on with their daily lives. Then there reaches a point where this heart attack or a minor heart attack, or whatever it is, a back goes out, whatever all those health things are, and no longer can they ignore that there's a little bit of a problem. And then the pendulum can swing the other way, like, oh man, I can't even bend over and tie my own shoe, whatever the case is. And they're so aware of their problem with their health in this situation, health. They don't know what to do, and they shut down. They get paralyzed. Mm-hmm. They get depressed, anxious, all that. Yeah. And then they kind of go like, you know what, forget it. It's fine. And then they'll swing all the way back here and say, whatever, it's fine, and keep going and ignoring it. And so this pendulum swing of ignoring that it's a problem and just carrying on with life, and then jumping all the way to this extreme, like, oh my gosh, I need to address this. I don't know how. And they shut down. It's kind of getting in that middle ground of the pendulum swing where it's kind of hitting your knees and saying, and I have a problem. And kind of like being honest, there's a good part of this side is that you're honest, there's a problem. The good part of this side is that you're being active. And so what you want to do is come down here and say, be honest about a problem, be active towards a solution. And being active is making 3 invitations. Invite God into it. Lord, I need your help. Help me to be as healthy and holy as you call me to be, right? Get me as fit as you want me to be, that sort of thing. And then invite God into it. People who love you, our spouse, like, hey, hon, I think I need help with this health issue. Well, let's go talk to Chris Netley. So you invite God into it, people who love you, and people can help you. And having all 3 is really important. And I think, like the Father loves us, right? He said, yeah, he'll help you discern what you need to do, but he'll help us discern how we grow in our health by these sorts of, by people love us or going to see the doctors, like you've mentioned. And so the prayer life is important because it's like inviting God, that supercharge, the Holy Spirit into these things and kind of maybe jumpstarting our battery and helping us guide us into those steps. And what we know in there's a great St. Francis de Sales is a doctor, one of the many 30 some doctors of the church. He was a great spiritual director for laity, and his thing was, all of us are to live a life of devotion, whatever our vocation. It's not just for priests or deacons or whatever. It's not just for princes, but it's for everyone. It's for wives, it's for kids, it's husband, whatever the job. And knowing to try to cultivate that. But he talked about the 3 little virtues, and one was humility before God. To know that we need God, that we're not all that, we're not God. And so that's kind of an invitation to that life. The spiritual life is about receiving God's love and spreading it out in this world, to oversimplify it. Humility before God, gentleness with others, right? Chris, I'm going to tell you right now, I think you're a very spiritually virtuous person. You have a humility before God. You are gentle. I mean, you're a Marine warrior, for goodness sakes. You could murder me right now. You could kill me, take me out, whatever, but there's a gentleness with others. So humility before God, gentleness with others, and patience with ourselves. Not to let ourselves off the hook. No, you got to get better, but being patient, because that's where the enemy gets in. You get these great New Year's plans. I'm going to do these great things. The first day you screw up and then you're like, you quit. The negative thinking. In the spiritual life, it's the same. You have this profound day of prayer, or you're reading scripture, and this the Lord speaks to us in a certain way, and he inspires us in our prayer to live like this, and like, oh my gosh, Lord, I see what you want for me. And then I'm going to start doing that. We resolve to do that based on the conversation God had with us, the Holy Spirit jumping into us, opening us up, receiving God, and God speaks to us in this way, quietly in our heart, but clearly showing you this path or where you need to be. And then we get on that path, and the enemy, if he can't stop God talking to us, once we receive the Lord's word and his mission, if you will, then he'll get in front of it and try to discourage us or make us trip or fall. And one of the ways he does it, as soon as we make our imperfect first steps, he'll say, yeah, you can't do this. Yeah. You know what? You stink. Mm-hmm. And yeah, you know, you're never going to be able to do what God wants from you. And that's where the wisdom of these three virtues, humility before God, invite him into it, know that you need him, and be gentle with others. Love God, love others, and love yourself. Be patient with yourself. It is, those three virtues are everything. And so, you know, you might say to me, you know, Chris, you might say to me, Aaron, you should lose 30 pounds. You're probably right. Then I take that to prayer and say, Lord, I think Chris is right. And by the way, that's discernment. That's a spiritual thing. We discern from God speaking to us quietly, directly in our own heart. But he also speaks to us through the people he puts in our lives. You know, so I've been kind of praying, like, maybe I should, you know, I should work out and that sort of thing. And then you come in and tell me, which you wouldn't use these words. Well, you might, no, because we're friends. But hey, you know, you can't even do one pull-up, buddy. Well, you should hit the gym. You know, you might, but I'm getting some discernment. God's working through directly to me and people around me. But whatever it is, whatever something to me, I'm going to take it to discernment. Lord, this came to me and it kind of stuck with me today. I think maybe they're right. What do you think, Lord? And just that conversation, Lord, I'm going to need your strength and encouragement because this is overwhelming. Keep me focused on the day to day, not look up and get too discouraged on the gap between there and here, but just follow your breadcrumb, Lords, each day and what you want for me in your life, and help me with this fitness. But I feel like I'm kind of answering your question, but maybe not doing a great job, but hopefully I'm trying to set up, or at least explain how I look at the spiritual life and the physical fitness. And earlier I said that just cultivating disciplines helps the spiritual life. And the spiritual life, if you're doing well at that, you've been cultivating disciplines and self-sacrifice, because it's not about you. You're loving God and loving others. And if you can sacrifice, you can apply that to working out. It's just, you got to figure out, Lord, do you want me to do this? How important is this, my physical fitness? Because you and I were talking before, you know, about preaching one time, and not too long ago, the pastor said, don't let, how did he set that up?
He said, don't let the important things in life block the essential things.
So what I would say when I hear that as a deacon, what I hear is physical fitness is important. Don't let it become like vainglory, become a block to that sort of. However,
I don't think that's the problem in the United States today. That people are doing so many push-ups that they're not reading. I was going to read the Bible today, but I wanted to bench press.
That's right. That's right.
It's like when people are like, you know, fruit has sugar in it. Maybe people should eat less fruit. And it's like, yeah, we got an obesity epidemic because people are ODing on oranges and bananas and oatmeal. I kind of doubt it. So that's kind of one of those things where I feel like you are going down a path that a lot of people, and I know why you're doing it, because you're trying to show this logic that people can go down. Well, maybe God just isn't calling me to open the gift that he gave me. And it makes me think of The Usual Suspects. Do you remember that movie? My dad loved that movie.
Who's
Kevin
in it?
Spacey.
Oh,
Benicio del Toro, like a young. So Kevin Spacey plays. He's like he has a limp, and they call him. I forget what they call him, like Gimp or something in there.
Yeah.
But he is Kaiser Soze. The whole thing is this mythological thing about Kaiser Soze, and he's playing everybody, and he's actually narrating the story, and he's lying to a detective. And as he's walking out and he's leaving the final scene, and he's lighting a cigarette, and he loses his limp, and he's narrating to himself. and the cops realizing he's been fooled. He says that the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world that he didn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're saying these things and it's like, well, maybe God isn't calling me to do this, or maybe I should do this, or maybe I shouldn't do this. I just like it. That's, to me, that's the trick. The trick isn't, it's so good. And it's so, because think about this. Even if you're not a priest, if you're just a really good Christian, the best Christian you could possibly be, you make the world better. You make the world a better place. We want you in this world longer. So we want to decrease your risk for dementia and Alzheimer's because we want that mind there. We want to decrease your risk for heart attack. Yep. The most, what is the saying? The most common signs and symptom. What's the most common symptom of a heart or sign of a heart attack? Or of your first heart attack? It's death. Most people don't survive it. So it's just like, we want to decrease your risk for Alzheimer's and dementia. We want to decrease your risk for heart disease. We want to decrease your risk for cancer. We want your immune system going. We want you to have energy levels. We don't want you to have metabolic issues like diabetes. So if you've got a group of people who make the world a better place through Christ, what better way? Why would you show up with horns and scare people? Just manipulate the grocery aisle. Those double stuffed Oreos I'm not trying to get you, go pray, go read the Bible, but have some snacks while you do it. You know what I mean? It's that slow influence that just insidiously sinks in. It's not there. Like nothing's evil. You know what I mean? It's all good. It's just a little snack here and there. I'm not going to work out today. And then years go by. And it's one of those things, like I say it and it sounds so simple. And there's probably people who, I'm not trying to judge you, but my job as a healthcare provider is to get you results. Yeah. So if you're listening to this and you're like, I would never work with that person. Good. I hope I'm weeding out people who don't want to work with me. Because what I do, and I try and associate with other healthcare providers who are similar, is we get results. We just do. And part of that is getting people to change. And there are a lot of different ways to do it. And so I feel like if you're already a Christian and you already have a good relationship with God and you have health problems, you haven't unwrapped the GoPro. Like what? Like, yeah, like let's go here. Like you're so close. And there's that insidious influence that is just holding you back. And it's like, it seems to them so far away, but from my standpoint, looking at the situation, it's like you gave up in the last mile. Like we could totally do this. And you have the support of God. You have the support of, you should have that support. They should be able to tap into that. And so it's paradoxical in a way where it's like, how can Christian, like I see everything through a military lens, because in the Marine Corps, they don't care if you're jacked. They don't care. They care that your physical body works, that it can do a job for what it needs to do. And they care that your mind works enough to make critical decisions like that. That's all they care about. Everything is geared towards being ready when you're needed, being ready when you're called. So from that perspective, it's almost shocking to me that like the priesthood doesn't have a physical fitness routine. Well, actually, what's funny. Why wouldn't you not want to extend a priest's active life? Yes. Preaching another decade. And we can do that by just vitamin push-up. You know what I mean? By doing that. And so it's like, I wonder a lot of times, like, why don't Christians and people who are deeply religious take this more seriously? I think St. Ignatius of Loyola, right, who founded the Jesuit order, and this whole type of prayer, these exercises, spiritual exercise, Ignatian spiritual exercise. If he was, if you could think about this, if he came today, he would have been a Marine. And the point is when I battle for, it's like, gosh, that early morning hour, do I use it for prayer or exercise? And I think the real answer is both. Merge them together. Figure out a way to link them up. And I think the motivation, it was funny. I knew you were going to get together, and I was like, oh man, the
the beginning of the preface of the Mass, of the Eucharistic prayers. And you've heard this 100 times, and the Catholics out there listening will recognize this, but it's like, it's that, you remember when the priest will say this, it is truly right and just, our duty and our salvation, always and everywhere to give you thanks, Lord, Holy Father, Almighty and eternal God. It is our duty, our duty and our salvation, always and everywhere to give you thanks, Lord, Holy Father, to give you thanks, to be grateful. And one of the ways we show gratitude for our gifts that he's given us is to use them towards building the kingdom. And so your point is, if there's a priest, right, and he's got all these gifts to build the kingdom, and he's failing to keep that balance, that's like a form of ingratitude. I say that with all my priest friends with great love, but I mean that goes for all of us, right? And they're working on that in the seminaries. I mean, they have weight rooms, they have things like that in these seminaries. They're getting them to compete, not just like, to blow off some steam. They're saying, no, we don't have a lot of you as a part of that's not why they're doing it. Yeah. But they understand the physical, the spiritual, they're seeing that and they're trying to cultivate that, right? Yeah. And that's a difference you'll see, and they're encouraged to find time to exercise. They need to do, for all the reasons, the battling, anxiety and depression, all these things, where can the enemy sneak into our lives? Well, that St. Francis de Sales I was telling you about, one of his great sayings is, there is no greater evil that can befall a soul apart from sin than anxiety. Than worrying, right? And so physical fitness is a part of our way to battle, because the mind, the soul, and the body are so integrated, right? As Christians, we believe, where's the second person of the Trinity right now? Jesus, he's in heaven in body. Yeah. I mean, the body is pretty important.
The anxiety thing is interesting, because that leads my dumb brain to being like, well, Christians should never have anxiety. It shouldn't be a Christian problem.
Be not afraid. He says it 1,000,000 times.
And I know that's very insensitive. So anyone with generalized anxiety disorder, I'm not saying just like, I realize it's not that easy to do.
But in theory, yes.
But so this is interesting. I've been reading the Bible every day, and I write down some things that stand out to me. To be fair, there's a lot of stuff I don't understand, but sometimes I'll read something and it'll just like slap me in the face. You know what I mean? Like, it's so obvious and so relevant, and I'll usually write those things down. So there's a couple things that I've written. Most of it's about walking a path. So, and I'm not going to be able to quote these, but essentially, and this shows up several times. It's like, walk in the light, don't walk in the dark, right? That's a theme. So for someone like me, who's like, okay, I grew up Christian. I would have called my upbringing like a cultural Catholic. I went to Catholic school for 9 years. I went to church twice a week. Catholic school for me was, I didn't really have a good relationship with our priests. They were older guys. They never really interacted. The nuns were cool. They taught us music, but it was very much, how do I say this? It was like the ritual was the primary thing, not the connection with God. And I think that's why when I listen to things like on YouTube, I actually connect better with Protestants because of that, because many of them have taken the ritual out and they're just talking about their relationship. Now, I understand when you take the ritual out, you can lose the path pretty easily. And I think that is, like, in my understanding, a problem. I don't want to say there's a problem with being Protestant, because I don't want to be that bold, but I'm just saying that, like, people, if you leave it up to your own interpretation, then things can be mistaken. But one of the common things that I get from the Bible, that I hear from Catholic priests, and I know from growing up, and that I hear from Protestants, is that, look, if you don't know what to do, and you don't think you can earn salvation, you're right. You can't. You can never be that good. But God sent Jesus to die for us, so you don't have to earn it. You just have to follow. And so if there's this concept of, like, If you don't know what to do, you obviously can't follow the path if you're in the dark. So get to the light. So you could look around if you're like, I don't know if I'm on the path. Well, look around you. What are you doing in life? Are you doing are you doing things that God probably wouldn't like? Well, stop doing that. And then you're back in the light. And once you're in the light, you can see things. And then you're on that path. And then it's a journey to follow, and it's a path. It's not a destination. So you just have to, you're going to get off the path, but you got to keep getting back on the path. And part of that, there's a general thing about talking about anxiety and worry. And I've seen it come up a couple times, and I actually wrote it down in this journal that I have. And it's not an actual verse. I just kind of, this is my summary of it. And it's something, and I wrote it really big on the front, because it's something that was like, why are you worrying, and why do you have anxiety? It's not going to change anything. Just be grateful. And I think that for me, having read this theme several times, when we feel lost and we don't know what to do, we're in the dark. We'll just look around, and what can you do to get out of the dark? So from a spiritual standpoint, stop doing the things that God wouldn't really like, and then you're kind of back in the light. From a health standpoint, the changes are so obvious, and then get back in the light, and then just realize that there's not an end destination. It's just a path, and there's no perfection there, and you're going to fall off the path, but you've got to get back on the path. And at any point when you fall off and you start to have anxiety and worry, well, why? Well, it's not fixing anything. So, and usually you have anxiety and worry about being in the dark, about eating the Oreos, the whole bag of Oreos.
Double stuffs.
Yeah. So you have anxiety for a reason. It's telling you something. It's obvious when you look around what's going on. It's obvious what you should do. And God, like a father looking at a toddler, is standing there like, yeah, dummy, just, I can't do it for you. I mean, I could, but I'm not going to. But how could I make it any more obvious what you need to do? And I think a lot of times people can't realize, they talk themselves out of stuff, to your point.
Yep.
And so like this podcast episode is interesting because I write down concepts of podcasts all the time. I have a running list, and getting on this topic has been on my list for a long time. And I went to Mass a couple weeks ago. Father had talked about that. He said that. And again, like, I'm not getting a whole lot out of some of these readings unless the sermon's good and they tie us together. And I don't think his sermon was particularly good on that day, but sometimes someone says something or I read something and I'm like, what? And that's what he said. He said, don't let the important things in your life get in the way of the essential things. And I was like, man, that's what I say, in other words, to my patients. And he's saying that from a higher level. And I thought, that is the title of this podcast that I've been thinking about for so long. And then I had emailed a group of people. You were on the email. You're the only one who replied. And it was about something totally unrelated. And you gave me some Latin phrase that I had to look up on YouTube because I didn't know how to pronounce it. And so I'm sitting there at the computer on YouTube thinking about it. And then I just thought, well, maybe I should email Aaron and see if he wants to do this podcast, because this had all just happened. I open up an email, I'm typing you in brand new email, and you called me. So it's like God is standing there. I'm the toddler, and he's like, I cannot make this any more obvious. You know what you need to do. You have the tools to do it. And I'm clearly putting the shoe on, like, the right shoe is right in front of the right foot, and the left shoe is right in front. You just got to stick your foot in, man. Just go do it, And so I feel like a lot of people with health, and physical fitness is just part of that. It's that obvious. The resources are there. You know what you need to do. God put the right shoe on the right in front of your right foot, and the left shoe right in front of the left foot. And people will talk themselves out of these things. And that's the hard part. And I remember a conversation I had with Nikki Ellis. I've talked about this on the podcast before. I don't even think she said this on the podcast, but I asked her, I was like, look, you deal with patients who, she's a pediatrician, by the way, you deal with patients who, many of them can't talk yet. And the ones who can't talk do not make decisions for themselves. And you need to make lifestyle changes happen and medication be taken at a certain time. Like there is something that has to happen in order to deal with whatever infectious disease is going around. So it's up to the parent. So you have to communicate to an adult to make sure that they get a kid to do, like, that's pretty hard. How do you deal with non-compliant situations? And she said something to the effect of, if they're non-compliant, then that's my fault. I didn't communicate it well. I didn't make it realistic for them. I didn't make it doable. And I feel like in many ways, God tries to do that, and we still talk ourselves out of it. You know, it'd be the equivalent of like the pediatrician driving to your house and being there when you and your kids wake up, you know, and putting the pill in, right? Not putting it in your mouth, but it's right there, just so you know. And I'm just going to stand here and wait till you take it. And then I'll be back in an hour and we'll do this over and over again. And I think for a lot of people, like the changes they need to make are quite simple. They're definitely challenging. For some people, the resources aren't available. I get it. But for a lot of people, they are. And we have unlimited access to information now. The information is out there. So my thought as a healthcare provider is, how do I challenge and guide people so that they can reach their full potential? And for Christians who have a good relationship with God, like, open the GoPro, like, let's go. Let's take advantage. You don't have to be jacked and tan, but you know what I mean? Like, let's take advantage of this gift. And for my non-Christians, or the people who don't have a relationship with God, that doesn't mean they're atheists or agnostic. Maybe they just don't think about it, but they take their health really seriously. Can we, and they're still listening to this podcast episode, can they actually experience the true full expression of their health, of what their bodies can do without that relationship with God? Is it even possible? Are they missing the mark because they lack that connection? Because I think this is a large population of people who don't have a good relationship with God, and they might not be jacked and tan, but they're trying to make changes and they're struggling. These are like the yo-yo dieters. It could be the yo-yo dieters all the way up to the active CrossFitters. It doesn't matter. These are people who are actively making an effort, some failing, some succeeding, but they don't have that relationship. How do they proceed? What's their next step?
I think if I got somebody's training really hard, there's so much humility, so much virtue cultivated, you know, that they're fertile ground to consider God again. I had one of my priest mentors said to me, a lot of us in our adult lives reach this point where we're invited to look at our faith with adult eyes. Most of these people that you're describing who are listening, you know, first of all, God loves you. But you know, if they sat quietly and thought about what their opinion of God is, probably has gone largely unchanged since some point in their childhood. And to look back at their relationship with God, or what they think about God or a higher power sometimes, is just, I would invite them to do that. It certainly wouldn't hurt their workout program, but I think it would give life to it. You know, I think in general terms, shame is a motivator, but it pales in comparison to love. And we could want to get in the weight room or exercise because we're afraid of what people think about ourselves or think about us and what we're doing, or that sort of thing. And that gets in, you know, a little bit of that helps get us in the door. But really that gratitude, which I was talking earlier about, just just knowing that we're loved, some higher power, something, someone's loving us, gave us this gift, and we don't want to squander it. And the fact is, it's deferred maintenance, right? You go around these places, they keep cutting from their, they should be putting money routinely into maintenance of their buildings, and then they defer that maintenance so they can use the cash for something else. They keep doing that, right? Next thing you know, I'm thinking of schools in particular, by the way. Next thing you know, that school has to close down. It can no longer teach, to your point earlier. So I think gratitude's a motivator. I just would encourage, wherever you are in your faith, that, it's a good time. Maybe when you're walking, turn off the radio or the jams or whatever you're using to pump yourself up, running, jogging, exercise, and quiet. And this is from my spiritual direction, or my spiritual tradition is what the word I was looking for, but also just my experience is when my first daughter was born. She had to go to a NICU, and we had to travel. It was kind of traumatic. I mean, because our small town didn't have a NICU. So I'd go down there in the hospital, and my wife, when she was recovered from her delivery, was able to get down to this hospital. She sat in the NICU by those, little bubble. They look like incubators. I don't know what you call them, right?
Yeah.
And the baby's in there, and you put your hand at whatever. She stayed there, and I was the only parent in the NICU parents waiting room for like 7 days. And let me tell you, the external world got quiet. I watched TV for a little bit. I turned the TV off because it wasn't satisfying. And the world got really quiet, the outside world. And about 2 days, 3 days into it, the inside got really quiet. It was a profound quiet. And I had this deep conversation with myself. And I was bargaining with God. I said, God, I was all right. Wasn't super churchy, a little churchy, but, and anyway, I said, I'd love to have her in my life if you'd have her. I know she's yours, God, but, it'd be a great gift to be a good steward of her life. And as the prayer quietly goes, this conversation, which was tough to explain at the time.
Yeah.
And he just said, basically in so many words, what I was receiving from God was, hey, I gave you this other life. It's yours, and I have more for you to do. But and it forced me to kind of look at everything. I mean, you mentioned earlier about the ritual versus the relationship and that sort of thing. Sometimes they seem like opposites. Well, I was one of those, right? And it was all the Protestant friends and pastors in my life that really kind of start turning the fire up, that sort of thing, and in my life. And then this happened, and it just, long story short, I went back to the Catholic Church and the sacraments came alive for me because of the love and that but anyway, the quiet conversation. I would encourage people, wherever they are in their lives, maybe there's a time you can find it, let the interior get quiet and have a conversation with God. Say, hey, God, we haven't talked a long time. I'm not sure if you're there, wherever you are with your belief, and just be quiet and say, if you're there, I'd like to know more about you, or you show me that you're there. And if you are there, I'd like help in this area of my life and that sort of thing. Worst case scenario does no harm. Best case scenario, the spiritual life and the physical life, it might start coalescing together and growing together. So I don't know if that makes any.
It does, because I think what you're talking about is stepping into the light so you can see what's already there. And I think that's like, for a lot of people, let's just say health changes. They can't see it. It's right in front of them. They can't, they know they need to make a change, but they can't do it, and they can't see it. And I feel like,
do you think they can't see it, or they just said, no, yeah, someday, and just,
I think it's not. I think for some people, it seems like they're looking at it and it looks like Mount Everest. And I'm looking at it like that's a little mound of dirt. Like there's nothing there. It's not a hurdle. It's not even real. This is you're making this up. It's an illusion. And sometimes you have to, as a healthcare provider, you have to grab someone's hand and walk through the illusion and be like, yeah, see, you didn't die, you know?
Yep.
And then you keep walking with them. You know, it's being a Sherpa in a way. It's like, well, we'll take a step today. We'll take a step tomorrow. And if you hang out with me long enough, we will get to the top of this Mount Everest, and you will look down and realize that it is a small hill, but you will have accomplished it. You will have conquered it. And then we can look, and beyond that, you'll see that there's bigger hills out there, but you'll start to be excited. Well, what's beyond that hill, and what's beyond that hill? And I think, so grabbing people by the hand as a healthcare provider and walking with them as a guide, not prescribing them things, but actively going on that journey with them, not taking steps for them, but being there when things are good and when things are bad and helping out. I think that, for me, that's the key. That's how I get excellent results in the clinic. It seems like that's not too far off of what a religious leader will do.
No.
They can't do it for you.
Right.
They can't have those conversations for you, but they can hold your hand and give you all of the guidance that you need, but you actually have to do it.
If there's voices in their heads, your listeners as exercising that are negative, you know, like in the spiritual conversations, when I'm talking to somebody, I'll say, you know, if it's discouraging, beating you up or whatever, that's not from the Lord. That's the enemy. The Lord will be truthful with you. And sometimes it's hard to accept the truth, but the Lord loves you as an encouraging. I mean, your description of yourself being a father, loving and encouraging, and speak to us, meeting us where we're at, that sort of thing. I'll tell you, in this sounds maybe hard, but when I look in the mirror, you know, side and thinking, ooh, you know, I see it. And I think it's an indicator that, of where I am in my life of virtue, which could be where I think there's a connection. Our physical bodies, unless there's some disease or illness, you know, oftentimes will show us that we're not where we need to be as a person in our. I got to be careful here. I don't want to discourage anyone, but in our faith, it points to some weaknesses in the faith and the virtue and that sort of thing. But what made me think of that is your point about the enemy will want to think it's like it's a mountain, and it really isn't. It's just get started. Yeah. Get started. The Lord will show you, will draw you. He's encouraged you, has your arm. I mean, like, put your yoke upon, you know, put my yoke upon you, right? That isn't what that is like two oxen, right? Is that the image of around the necks is that there's you and there's the Lord next to you, and he's kind of looking at you like, let's go, that sort of thing. And we let the Lord lead us and let him encourage us and be with us every step of the way, including even working out. What happens is we can do that with other people. And the image I have is, you know, the Stations of the Cross, right? It was when Simon of Cyrene comes to help carry that burden of the Lord, you know, with the cross, is that we can be Simons of Cyrene to other people, that we let the Lord help us and encourage us and be patient with ourselves, but persistent, but patient, but persistent. Keep going with the Lord, right? We too can help someone else move along the way. I mean, look how the apostles, the disciples worked in two, and then after the Lord left, they went and they got another one. Then he cultivated another one, right? And that's how that's kind of the pattern. Yeah. I digress.
No,
sorry.
It's, and that's why I think I go back to probably what I'm going to make the title of this episode is what Father says, just don't let the important things in life block the essential things, because that statement works on every level.
Yeah.
If you are trying to improve your health and you know that increasing physical fitness and physical activity is a key component of that, and you got a bad knee, why can't you do push-ups? You got a bad shoulder, why can't you do lunges? You got a bad knee and a bad shoulder, why can't you do a plank? Why can't you walk more? Why can't you do something? There's something that you can do. So don't let and there are important things in your life that are going to get in the way. There are. But, you know, if if moving more or making other changes is essential to you, your health is essential to you surviving, then what who cares about the important things then? It doesn't matter as much. And then you could take that to any level though. You know, if someone is out there and they're so jacked and tan that it's getting in the way of their relationship with God, it could happen because they're treating something as an idol at that point. So don't do that. Yep. You know, I just think regardless of what you're dealing with in life, I just felt like when Father said that, I was like, wow. You know, like we could apply that to anything.
Yeah.
And that was the catalyst that ended up with us sitting here right now. And so when I'm thinking about the people out there who are actively making changes and living a life to be healthy, whatever that means for them, but they don't have that relationship with God, how can this podcast episode, if they're still listening, challenge and guide them so that they can reach their full potential? Like what could we give them that we haven't already given them that they could actually use? So this podcast episode ends and someone turns off everything and it goes quiet. And they've never done this before, or they haven't done it since they were a kid and now they're an adult. How would you even, because we're talking about a conversation, it's super awkward to walk up to a person and just stand there and not say anything. That's weird, you know, and it feels weird. It's not weird to God, but that would feel weird for a lot of people. It's like, okay, I'm going to try this. I'm going to turn off everything. I'm just going to be quiet. Well, at some point you got to say something. You have to ask something, or you have to, I don't know. Someone has to say something or connect in a way. How would someone do that? Let's say they sit silent for an hour, nothing. And they decide, well, I have to say something to God. I have to start this conversation. What's the best way to start? What's a good way to start? I want to give people out there who are still listening, who have this problem, something usable that they could, like, today.
All right.
Use it.
All right. Remember the image I gave of my kid coming up and giving me the world's worst painting?
Yeah.
And offering it to me?
Yes.
Insane. And it touched my heart. I would encourage him to have that image, to go somewhere. Sometimes it's good to get out of your normal spaces. Maybe go to some church, your nearest church, and sit in their sanctuary, knock on the door. Can I come in? And just sit there, say, Lord, God, I don't know what I believe. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know what I believe. I don't know how much I believe in you. I don't know. But if you are there, you may be there. I'm here to say thank you, if you are there, for the good things in my life or that sort of thing, and for your help in my life. I'm asking for your help. That's a profound thing. That's like, you know, I think it's harder to do that, and it is like it's like skipping leg. I mean, I was trying to draw a connection. Skipping leg days, the old saying. That's like leg days. That's a hard thing. That's an uncomfortable thing, but it's a start, and see where it goes. And you're saying, I'm here to, and if you go, all right, Lord, you prove to me you're here. You can do that. You'd be surprised how he works and how he responds. But if you go there with a humble heart and say, and be honest, you know, if it's weird to be silent, you can say, hey, I'm mad about this. I'm ticked. Where were you when blah, blah, blah? How come? You know, and I'll tell you that a lot of times what these points to is it's not always like ignorance. Oh, I've never heard of God. Oh, I never knew about that. Now, usually the case in my experience when talking with people, there's a wound going way back. and someone heard, and just like, God, where were you? If you were exist, why would you let this happen? It's those quiet questions, right? And pursuing those, but like forgiving God, if you will. All right, if you're there, I'm mad about this. It's again, it's that place of humility and said, Lord, if you're here, I could use your help. But there's no question in the power of the linkage between prayer life and physical fitness, the fitness of the body. If one of them's bad, if your body's bad, and there's like this big, that's usually an indicator. If the brakes are squeaking, that sort of thing. And I don't say it to beat them up. It's just like an honest thing about, hey, but for those people out there who are in great shape, and just, I don't need God, okay. I just encourage you, to give it a try, and what I've seen, and I just have a lot of I've seen priests who are really holy and peaceful, and I've met priests or religious or whatever that aren't happy, they got the collar, but you can tell there's just a lot going on in their life. They're not happy, and I can see those people who are firing on all cylinders, not perfect, but on all cylinders in their physical fitness and their spiritual life. And I can see it and I envy it because I'm not there. Mm-hmm. Right. And it's a gift. You just see the joy. And, what does the Lord say to us other than be not afraid, a gazillion times in scripture, but pick up your cross and follow me. You guys been picking up your crosses. You've been picking up your 315 pounds or all that weight. He's just like, come follow me.
Yeah.
I love you. Give me another chance.
And that imagery is the imagery of a journey, I think, not a destination. You're on that path. And I think for those who are on the path, or they have questions about God, and I think a lot of times they'll look at the church, let's say the Catholic Church, and it looks from the outside in like this exclusive country club, with only the good people. Well, we've got these rituals, and you don't know what they are, and you're not part of the club, and you're going to go in and feel awkward. And it's not just Catholicism. I think it's probably any religion. Someone's curious about it. But I think there's something very interesting about Christianity in general, is that it's not really how it was designed. Jesus didn't go hang out with the good people. He hung out with the people. Just, it didn't really, and he gravitated towards the tax collectors and people like that, where he could have an effect, the poor people, the people who needed him, not the people who were doing all the great things.
Well, they knew they knew they needed help. Like they responded. Like what was the Lord, like when he talks to the, those who he's going to heal, I blend all I'm Catholic. I can just blend all the scripture. I don't have it all memorized.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what do you want? He says, what do you want from me?
Yeah.
Do you want me to heal you? Do you want to be healed? What do you want? And he puts it back on them. And what that is, it's like a surrender. I need help. I need your help. Yes. Yeah. And it was that faith, right? And, but the healing ministry of our Lord is missed, right?
Yeah.
If you're working out and you're great, but your heart is angry about something, right? There's no greater motivator, or there's no greater gift than to let God heal that, the forgiveness, right? That's, this, the story of my parents' divorce, and that was, I was 13, and the marital storm cloud came over our house, and I thought we were one big happy family. Next thing you know, it's just me and my mom. Older two guys were gone. My dad was gone, rest his soul. He and I since reconciled, but that put in motion some basic survival skills, emotional survival skills, and I didn't see it. I was always a happy-go-lucky kid, but it started to harden my heart, and I grew in resentment over my teenage years, high school and college, and that sort of thing. And living worldly vices, if you will, and that sort of thing. And it was someone kind of nudging me and say, "Hey, come and see, I know you're mad, but but there was an invitation to heal, and whatever it was, I was just open enough. I gave it a shot, humble enough to hear it. And I think God's always chipping away at all of us, wherever we are in our faith life, but whatever the moment was right, Holy Spirit opened me up, and someone asked, invited, and I started this journey of healing that, of forgiveness. Because if we got a heart, God gives us one heart, right? And if it's hardened, even just a corner of it, that hardened heart, that corner, we take that heart with a hardened corner into every relationship, every decision we make, every commitment we try to make. It is the filter through which we live our lives, So, inviting the Lord to come heal us and trying to grow in that relationship can be transforming in all areas. And the physical fitness part would be one of them. But I always admire people who are trying to work out, who are going on that journey, because I think those are just the sort. They're going on a journey and they're faithful each day. They try to be. If they make a mistake, the Latin word you're looking for is nunc cepi.
There you go.
Nunc cepi, which is now I begin. And every time we fall, we can sit there and feel sorry for ourselves, or let the enemy beat us up, or negative thoughts, or we can kind of smile warmly, humbly, look at God, and we're just like, oh, of course I screwed up. Oh, I screwed up. And we get up. Now I begin.
Yeah.
Nunc cepi. Now I begin. And so.
Sounds like a flavor of gelato.
Oh, man.
That you'd get right outside of the Vatican.
That's right.
Now you got to make your own brand of gelato and sell it in Italy.
Could I use double stuff gelato brand? I'd probably have to.
Yeah.
Nabisco, was it Nabisco makes those? You think I'd know?
You could have them blessed.
Oh, that's, yeah.
So you could charge more because you just take every case to mass.
That's right.
And then have it blessed.
I'd have to check all the fine print
it's not ethical. But
did you see where the Steelers put holy water in the end zone, or the priest of there? Yeah, there's been all over the whatever social media. I just, it's funny.
That's why I love listening to interviews with Tim Tebow, because people always ask him those questions. Do you think God favored you? And I think his responses are always so good.
He's good, isn't he?
He is. Very good. And I think I can't retell the story, but I had never heard it before. I'm not a huge football fan, but I had recently listened to an interview with Tim Tebow, and I'm sure he's told this story so many times about when he was playing for the Broncos, and I think they beat the Steelers or someone, and it was in the playoffs. They beat somebody, and then they were going to go on. And he said they beat the Steelers, but then they were going to go play the Patriots, and they got smoked by the Patriots. But it was about the 316. Have you heard that story?
Yeah.
If anyone's listening, I won't be able to tell it well, but just look up, get on Google, put in Tim Tebow, put Broncos 316, because he changed the Bible verse under his eye for the national championship to John 3:16, and his coach was
superstitious
about
it.
He was very superstitious, but he let him do it. They won the national championship, and then he goes and they win that game, and he was playing. And then someone from their media department comes up after, right as he's about to go to a press conference, and was like, no, it's been like, I don't know, 316 days since you won the championship. And every stat was 316. Like there was like 3 million, whatever people, 301, like million people watched. And then this many people Googled John 3:16, and then he threw for 316 yards, or like he rushed a certain, everything was 316, like every stat. And so it was like, and he said it was obviously he's checking his pride because he's about to go, he's about to go into this press conference, like, yeah, I'm the man. And like, oh, okay, well, obviously I need to, the way he told the story, the interview that I listened to, no one wanted to ask him about it. They all felt weird. And then eventually someone brought it up and they said something to the effect of like, don't you think it's a coincidence? And he said something like, yeah, you could think of it that way. Or you could think of it, there's a God that loves you.
Yeah.
And is making himself very obvious, and I think that's that.
I think it fits here.
That toddler analogy where
Yep.
it's like, okay, yeah, good job. You put it on yourself. You put your boots on yourself. Well, but did you really get all that, and that toddler pride of like, I'm a big kid. I got dressed by myself. And it's just, I don't know.
Chris, I've been doing funerals I've been ordained 16 years now, is it? Almost 17, but just done a lot of funerals. Sometimes people, not real churchy, said, hey, I want a service of some sort. And our local undertakers know that I'm comfortable in the uncomfortable. Yeah. So a lot of times I'll ask different denominations and whatever, and then where the families come, even in their families of the deceased, have very different levels of faith lives, right? But what is universal is that it just seems that everyone has this sense that there's something more after this life. They'll say things like, well, Grandma, she's up with the angels now. She's an angel now, or that she's watching over us, or he's watching over us. Like it's rarely like no one will say, or maybe it's obvious because it wouldn't go over well, but I'm pretty good at helping guys open up, or people, just kind of talking to them at the service, but no one says, yeah, they're gone. There's nothing after this. Now, even the ones, it's in us. It's a universal kind of experience, whatever, that there's something more beyond. Mm-hmm. And I just say that to that point, you may think it was just coincidence, but man, I'm of the mind that there's something more, something greater more, and something who loves us. And I think, again, I guess I'm just repeating myself, but we've been on the run and busy so long since we were 14 years old or 15 years old. I encourage you guys, if you're listening to this, just consider stopping wherever you are in your faith life. Let things quiet down and have a quiet conversation. See the link between our spiritual life and our physical life. It is there. It's profound. And yes, I will say at one level, the essential is the spiritual life, and the physical that's important. But what's really, I hope people see, is how essential the physical life is to the spiritual life. Does that make sense, Chris? We're talking about, it's not, the physical life is not just important to the spiritual life. I think it's essential.
Yeah, I still love my son, even if he never opens the GoPro. But I kind of want him to open the GoPro, I want to see what he does with it. I want to see what he makes, what videos he makes, and how I want to watch him enjoy the gift that I gave him. And he will at some point. But I just wonder, for people out there who are taking it for granted.
Yeah.
You just never unwrapped the gift, or you did, but you never used it. It's not too late. You could be in your 70s and think, man, I wasted a lot of time. It's not too late. There's a lot you can still do. You can still move. You can still, you can still use that gift. And I think what I experience as a healthcare provider, as I watch people and we talk about things and we work on things, regret and shame. And it's not so much of, oh, I look bad, or it's time wasted. And I've had patients start crying because of that. Like, I can't believe I wasted so much time and I didn't use my body and I didn't take this seriously.
Chris, think what you helped them do. Like, it's inertia. right?
Yeah.
You just get them moving, and they realized all along, and it's overwhelming. In a spiritual life, and like if someone's doing spiritual direction,
Yeah.
and you're talking about stuff, and all of a sudden you get emotional, you start tearing up and crying. Like if I'm directing someone or coaching or mentoring something, I can see they get teared up.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times their first instinct is to run away from that. You know, I go, no, stay there. I go, that's where God's working on you right now in healing you, or that's the thing he wants you to pay attention to. So those tears, you know, that is a profound spiritual moment for them. Those are spiritual moments that you are guiding them through. They may not define them as that, but that's what's going on.
Yeah. And I don't know. I think being a guide, whether you're a healthcare provider, a coach, sport coach, fitness coach, doctor, a religious leader, deacon, a parent, just a friend, you know, being a guide is an amazing thing, but you also have to walk the walk. And I think a lot of people don't realize that once you make the choice to be a healthier person, to have a healthier physical body, you do affect everyone around you. And it's almost always positive.
Yeah.
Because they want to go along with that. They want to do that. You know, and then you may think that you're pathetic, and you may feel like you have all this shame. But you would be, I think most people would be shocked if they started doing push-ups every day. Once people start to find out, you'll become the hero of probably your whole friend group. And it didn't really take much. And then you become the guide in a way, and you get to use that. And I just think there's no level that you have to attain. You know, I'm not going to say there's an ideal body weight or ideal body fat percentage, or you can't be unhealthy in a certain way. And I'm curious, how would you define spiritual health? Because I can put numbers on physical health. We can measure it. There's all different kinds of measurements we can do. And we can do a battery of tests on an individual and say more or less this person, or we can compare people. Let's say we take our 10 people. We can do height, weight, body fat percentage. We can do a blood work. We can do blood pressure, pulse. We can check their temperature. We can look at blood sugar. We can do physical fitness tests. We can test their grip strength. We can run I could do bone density. We could look at fat-free mass. I mean, there's so many objective tests, and we could look at them. We can compare them. But spiritual health is different in a way. How would you even define being spiritually healthy? Because I'm willing to bet it's not when you get your country club card and now you're part of the crew. You know what I mean? Like, it's not, maybe not something that you attain in that way, but is it more of a path, being on the path? Or how do you even, if someone says, I don't think I'm spiritually healthy, I don't even know what that means. Where would you even start with that?
In Christian tradition, it's a love of God. The pinnacle of the spiritual life is living in communion with God, sharing in his divine life. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
Which one's doing it? Well,
how do you know?
Yeah, I would say that looking at, so maybe another way of figuring it out is kind of ask a bunch of, imagine asking people like, who's the holiest person you've ever met in your life? You know, the most godly person that you know. Tell me about them. What are they like? And you do that at 2,000 times with, Christians. You're going to start seeing some responses that are pretty similar. You're going to start seeing some themes. And I think one of the themes is joy. Is there any other type of Christians besides a joyful one? You ever met really angry, resentful Christians? I'm sure, there are, because we're all fallen. But that deep spiritual life is joy. They're happy. And not like a surfacey, happy, clappy kind of like, oh, that's so much fun, but it's a deeper, abiding joy. There's a peace in them. There's an immovability. I mean, I can think of 5 people right now that I just look up to. Like they're not perfect. They know that. They'd be the first to say, but there's this holiness, deep, abiding joy in them.
That, man, this is why I love podcasts, because the long form discussion, I don't know how long we've been talking, but like to get to that.
Don't run from that. Don't run from it.
It's funny because like the last time I got emotional on a podcast, we were talking about my dad and how he died. And that's like, there wasn't always a lot of joy there, but it's crazy because, so you thought, like, I just feel like this is, okay, so this is, and maybe if people are still listening, hopefully they are, but for the one person who's still listening to this at this point, sometimes I'll read research and, that there'll be some sentence that just jumps out at me. And I feel like if you don't pay attention, you miss it. You miss the finer detail of what they're trying to say. And it's usually in the discussion or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you go, oh man, I actually appreciate this a lot more because of that. And sometimes it's like, you don't even necessarily agree with it, or it doesn't seem that relevant. And then you read a piece of it, something jumps out. So and I have a similar thing in church. Sometimes it's like, I'm getting nothing out of this mass, and then there's one sentence and it's like, you know what I mean? Like it all ties together, or that one sentence just makes it worth it. So if you're talking about spiritual health being joy, I don't think you can simplify it more than a 3-letter word. And so for anyone who's like, I don't know what to do, how much more simple do you want it than one 3-letter word? If that's what it is. And it makes me think of, so there's how we define health. This is a big topic, and we talk about it in the class that I teach. And I reference an article called "How Do We Define Health?" And I think it's an older article. It's an opinion piece, and basically they start off talking about the World Health Organization definition of health, which I think we still use, and was developed in the 1940s. And I can't say it verbatim, but it's something to the effect of a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, not just the absence of disease. Now, in the 40s, that was seen as revolutionary because they talked about social well-being and mental well-being. But in the 1940s, the landscape of disease was very different. Chronic diseases weren't a huge problem. We were coming out of depression in World War II. So infectious disease was a bigger problem. Starvation was a legitimate problem, And so as the landscape of health has changed over time, sanitation's gotten better. We have more preservative. Like there's just things have gotten better. The landscape of disease has changed. People are living longer with chronic diseases now, where that wasn't really a problem back then. So the authors of this article are saying we need to reshape this definition of health. It doesn't serve us anymore. And the problem they had with that statement was the word complete. If health means a complete state of mental, physical, and social well-being, then most people are going to be unhealthy most of the time. And if you happen to get type 1 diabetes when you're a kid, and it's not your fault, you can never be healthy. If you're crippled, you can never be healthy. If you have a chronic disease, you can never be healthy. It just leaves most people unhealthy most of the time. So they were saying, we got to delete this word complete, but we've got to add something to it. And this is what makes me, when you're talking about joy, it makes me think about it, is that they use the analogy of looking at the environment. The environment is a complex system that is constantly fighting for equilibrium, and it will always attain it. And so they said that the definition of health should include the ability, just like the environment is complex, the human body is complex, and we are always fighting for homeostasis. So if a human has the ability to adapt and to self-manage, technically they should be considered healthy. So you could have multiple comorbidities and you get COVID and you don't die. It's pretty healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And you could have someone who gets COVID and had no comorbidities, and they were way healthier, quote unquote, and they died. Well, I would say the one who survived the viral infection is technically healthier than the one who died, obviously. So if we then our health is our ability to adapt and to self-manage. Our health is essentially resilience. Regardless of what gets thrown at you in life, you are able to adapt and self-manage, and you don't die. You just keep going. So when I hear you say that spiritual health is joy, there are infinite things in life that are not joyful, that are going to steal your joy. So if you're able to have a joyful resilience and to adapt and self-manage and maintain joy in the face of just absolute chaos, regardless of, you could have the worst life ever. If you can find joy.
But joy is a healthy symptom. It's pointing to what you have.
Yeah.
Which is living in the divine life, sharing in the divine life, living in communion with God. And you can know it and an indicator of that's going on is that ability to remain joyful through the ups and downs, not perfectly joyful, but I mean, because part of our faith tradition is that we're supposed to, the suffering, death, and resurrection of our Lord, right? The Paschal mystery that every year we celebrate Easter, like our whole church season is built on dying to that last year and then rising again to meet the new year. Each week we die on Sunday, we begin the week, we die to the person we were the last week and rise closer to in deeper, more powerful, profound communion with God and from the Mass or from worship, right? For that week. And every night in the spiritual life, we die to the person we were. We think about our failures, sins, mistakes, whatever, whatever. It's Paschal mystery. That's called the Paschal mystery, suffering, death, and resurrection, that we're invited to live in it. And so, meaning there's Easter in our life, and there's no Easter without the Good Friday, right? And it's a way of life. It is as a Christian that we die and rise, that the Easters are inseparable from the Good Friday. And when you think about your dad's life, and we share that Dead Dad Club thing, I don't mean to be, my sense of humor helps me grieve, right? But here's what I learned in a real powerful way in my own life, Paschal joy. Mm. Paschal joy means this mysterious, profound pain and suffering, or just sadness, or how do I say that? It's the Paschal joy is just this mingling of this powerful anguish, but yet joy and love. Like when I watched my dad die, right? He was, and knowing that he wasn't going to make it out, they said, hey, not to throw gas on the thing about the shot. He got the COVID shot, right? Now he had some comorbidities. He had come out of lung cancer and all that sort of stuff, but he got the shot. They're saying, hey, let's just preventative. He was dead 10 days later. So it was a surprise, right? Yeah. Hey, he's in a hospital. They're not going to go. What do you mean he's not going to go? Or he's not leaving? What? They're shut down the hospital? No, he's not going to survive this. So I go there and I'm kind of in the agony of the garden with him, kind of the way of the cross, watching him go through, and it was the most painful and beautiful, joyful experience in my life. And it was a mixture of it. It was the most beautiful thing, right? So, yeah, sorry, I digress into a personal story, but this goal of the spiritual life, let's frame this, is to share in the life of God, to be in communion with him, to share in that love between the Father and the Son, right? That we kind of like, you got a dog, right? I don't know if you ever hugged your wife. You guys ever hugged and watched the dog go nuts, right? It's kind of like, it's kind of like in kids, they love it when they see their parents hug, right? And so the love of the Father and the Son, right? And the Holy Spirit, coming from, the love between them and all that we want to share in that, like that dog gets all excited. I don't know if that image works, right? But the point is we share in that divine life.
Yeah.
And to do that, to love God, to receive his love, to love God with everything we got, and then to go forth and to love one another as we love ourselves, right? To love other people, to love ourselves as we should. There's going to be suffering. There's going to be sacrifice. There's going to be fortitude and temperance. And it's almost insurmountable with God's help. Sometimes it can be.
But
right?
Then being spiritually healthy and having that relationship allows you to adapt and self-manage and be resilient and still be joyful, even though all the stuff's happening. And I think there's the parallel between trying to be physically fit and walking that path, and then eating good food and making the effort, whether you succeed or not. You're trying to cultivate that resilience so that your body can adapt and to self-manage. And it's hard. These are such deep topics that it's so hard to frame these things. And sometimes, you can sit down and you can write, or you can think about it, or you can listen to other people. But sometimes it's just helpful to brain dump and kind of work through stuff, because I don't think I could have gotten to this point had we not had all the other stupid stuff that we talked about. I don't know. We didn't talk about stupid stuff, but you know what I'm saying? Sometimes you have to sit down and maybe that's part of what you're getting at is by being silent and being still and just present. It might, maybe you and you're sitting there for an hour and nothing's happened. You just haven't done it long enough. Maybe, maybe that's part of it as well. When someone goes on a diet and they start an exercise program, it's been a week, and then, why don't I see the changes? Well, you haven't been on the path long enough. So maybe that's something for people as well. If I tried it and God didn't say anything, but maybe he did, and maybe you didn't hear it. The other day, Marissa was stressed out. This was a couple weeks ago. It was funny. It's not funny, but there was something going on, and the kids were going different places, and there was snow on the ground. She ran outside, and I wouldn't say we were fighting, but there was friction, and she came back in smiling, and she had stepped on something in the snow and reached over and picked it up and thought it was trash, and it was a sticker that some college kid had dropped. And it said something, I forget what, like don't worry about it, or it was something like that. And whatever the phrase was so relevant to what we had been arguing about. And she was like, it's not a big deal, but we both were under that. I mean, we're not sitting there thinking, wow, what a coincidence.
Right.
But you could miss that. And so I feel like if you're not trying to walk in the light, if you're not trying to listen, if you're not trying to calm things down, you do miss so much stuff. And then once you start, you ultimately feel like, man, there's a lot of coincidences going on. This is weird. But then, is it?
Well, a couple of things is wherever you are in your faith life, and there's research on this, I'm sure. I swear someone shared this to me because I was running a silent retreat, but just kind of a secular, non-Christian or faith-filled, how important silence is.
Yeah. For
just mental health and kind of recalibrating that. But silence is important. And if you're going to get into silence, search for God. Try to look at him with new eyes, with adult eyes. What were you just saying with the?
Find joy. Find a way to cultivate that. I think that's, if we can make it as simple as possible, do push-ups and be joyful and grateful that you can do push-ups.
There you go.
Vitamin push-up fixes a lot of stuff.
I'll have there's this priest that pops up he's on podcasts. I think it's just his homilies or on reels, I guess. I guess it's not a podcast, but I don't know how long ago it was. Maybe it was Advent or something, but it really stuck with me. Like you said, that homily that you heard about the essentials and the important. But he was talking about God's mercy in our life, and he was like, and just God's involvement. And he said, let God's mercy take care of yesterday. Let his providence take care of tomorrow and allow his love to take care of today. That was short, and it may sound cute, but yesterday's worries and the shame, like that person you're talking about crying, let the Lord heal that. And tomorrow, stay faithful, do the little steps, go on this journey of Paschal mystery, I would add, just keep getting better, dying to self, rising again. God will take you where you need to go. Just do the faithful steps, which brings us to today. Be faithful to today and let his love take care of today.
Well, I think that's probably a good spot to end it.
Yeah. Hey, if anyone's still there, I'll end with a prayer. Does that seem fitting?
It does.
Okay. All right. Let's pray. And just for, I don't know, what's your demographic for guys, men versus women? Liz, do you have a sense of that? Because this is very helpful for dudes. I got a 5-step prayer. All right.
I don't know. I probably have 10 listeners, and they're probably you probably know all. They're probably related to me.
Okay. So. All right. Well, and I've mentioned this to you before, but it's God, I love you. I look forward to the family reunion, that fellowship in heaven. And thank you. Sorry. Can you help a brother out? So let us pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for your gift of life. We came into this world and have these challenges and all that. We thank you. We love you. We may struggle to love you. We don't know, not sure. We're not clear about you, but we love you. We look forward to that day that we have this sense that this fellowship in heaven where we'll be with you and your promises and be with those we love, we hope someday. We're thankful for all the gifts in our lives. We're actually thank you for the challenges, for the hurdles, for the crosses that we are given that maybe we didn't ask for, because sometimes those are the most precious gifts in our lives. But regardless, Lord, we thank you for whatever it is we need to thank you for, right? For each one of us listening and praying. We apologize. We ask for forgiveness where we've fallen short, and to give us the courage to get back up. As soon as we see it, sorry, give us the courage to get back up. And we ask you to continue to bless us in our lives, to stay close to us, to help us stay close to you, to stay close to those we love, and that we continue to grow closer to you and to live our lives in communion with you, that we can have that joy, that Paschal joy in our lives, and understand how close our spiritual lives are to our physical lives, our physical fitness and our spiritual fitness, that you can show us how to make that work in our lives. Amen. All right. Is that good?
It's good.
Hey, thanks for listening to this podcast episode. I hope you got something out of it. If you're still listening, I'm assuming you did get something out of it. I am doing something very unusual right now. Usually I don't record intros, and now I'm recording an outro, or I guess an epilogue, if you will. Part of the process of hosting this podcast is also producing the podcast, and we ran into some technical difficulties based on the room where we recorded, so we had a ton of echo. And as you can tell, I was able to edit it out, but not only am I not good at setting up a podcast studio, but I'm not good at editing, so I actually have to go through almost line by line, minute by minute, and make sure that everything's good. Now, the benefit was that I got to enjoy this podcast as a listener, and I will say recording it was incredibly therapeutic. As you can tell, I got emotional, which I didn't expect that was going to happen. It's an intense topic. And then getting to actually having to go back and listen to every line of that over and over again, I got a lot out of it. And
it was, if for nothing else, this is a therapeutic process for me. I believe that there's a lot of word vomit in this, and there's a lot of me just saying things out loud and kind of bouncing things off Aaron, but I did feel like it took an hour and a half. If you started listening at about an hour 30, I think that's where we really hit our stride with this conversation and where things started to click and line up for me. So I want to summarize at least my takeaways from this. If we're talking about physical health and we want to define physical health, it's our ability to adapt and to self-manage, aka resilience. I think resilience is a great word. If you have resilience and you're able to adapt and to self-manage, you're probably pretty healthy. Now, we cultivate this resilience through a lot of different things. We have just general physical activity, so it's moving your body. Within the physical fitness realm, we look at, are you getting stronger? Developing that lean muscle mass, so the strength, developing your cardio. So cardio matters a lot when it comes to longevity and when it comes to health. We talk about food. We can talk about sleep. We can talk about positive relationships. We can talk about mental health, so stress, anxiety, depression. We can talk about there are a lot of different ways to cultivate resilience for physical health. Now, if we're going to look at defining spiritual health, it's the ability to remain joyful, aka resilience. So we're seeing this crossover here. So we cultivate this resilience of spiritual health through our relationship with God. Now, if you're thinking about just the physical health aspect, all of those things that I listed, the physical fitness, strength training, cardio, moving your body, working on your diet, working on your sleep, having healthy relationships, managing any comorbidities, it's simple to list it out, but it's really hard to do. And it's hard to do because you have to work on these things consistently over a long period of time to get anything out of it. And a lot of people fall short. And so I think a lot of people can lean on God for that in that process. So I've got a lot of people out there who already have a good relationship with God, but they're struggling. And I think they can go back and they can look at this and they can find that strength. And there are people out there who are dealing with health problems and they don't have that relationship with God. Maybe that's what you're missing. But then we look at being completely healthy. I'm picturing in my mind this Venn diagram. All right. So you've got two circles. You've got physical health and you've got spiritual health. And where they cross over, that section in the middle of that Venn diagram, I think that's your full potential. Because remember, Build Beyond, as a company, we challenge and guide so that you can reach your full potential. And for me now, having been part of this discussion and then having re-listened to it and watched it, to me, that's the clarity that I have right now. If we're looking to maximize our full potential as a human, we want to look at maximizing physical health and spiritual health, and we want to look where those two intersect. So if I can leave you with anything, remember that being stressed out about these things and worrying about them, it doesn't change anything. And you can take action on your own. You may need some help with that, but you can also lean on God. So being stressed doesn't change anything. Worrying about it doesn't change anything. Find something to be grateful about and then take some action. And I guess I'm going to leave you with the quote that was the catalyst for recording this episode. Don't let the important things in life block the essential things. However, whatever that means to you, if you follow that, you're probably moving in the right direction. Okay, thanks for listening, and look forward to the next episode.